The topic of discussion today is environment. Everything on the earth is linked. If one area on the earth is in deep trouble, it will affect others and it will lead to the disruption of the whole planetary system. Cooperation is very much necessary regarding environmental issues. We all know that the resources on planet Earth is exhaustible. The resources on this earth belongs to all. Human beings are trustees of this natural wealth. No state can be allowed to destroy the natural wealth, extract the resources so that it will be detrimental to the other countries. Several important environmental issues have come up, like deforestation, overfishing, pollution of rivers, discharge of effluents, oil spills in oceans, releasing of hazardous gas substances or microorganisms in air, and several other important issues. It has become an important realization that in order to address these important international environmental problems, the cooperation of all the countries, the non-state actors, are necessary. The concept of sustainable development has come in. The Brundtland Commission has stated that sustainable development has to be implemented in order to make the world a better place to live in. Now, what is sustainable development? It means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet theirs. The concept of sustainable development is a critique of the traditional concept of development. Development on earth has happened in such a manner where there has been great industrialization, urbanization, which has actually attacked or destroyed the environment. Sustainable development has three pillars. Number one, development should observe the carrying capacity of land, air, water, and forests, which are the four basic resources to sustain life over the planet. If they are overused or misused, it will be very difficult to replenish, regenerate, or recharge these resources. They will be lost forever. Number two, development should observe intra-generational equity and justice. It means that development should benefit all classes and sections of society. Number three, development should observe intergenerational equity and justice. 14.7% of the Earth's land and 12% of its territorial waters are under protection. According to the recent Protected Planet Report 2016, the protection of the environment is not taking place. Crucial biodiversity areas are being left out. The world is facing critical environmental and societal challenges. Now we'll be talking about an important conference which happened in 1972, which is the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, Stockholm, Sweden. Now, in the 1980s, we found that there was a rise of environmentalism, and Sweden took the initiative to address the issue of global deterioration of human environment. It initiated the United Nations to take an initiative to go ahead with this conference. International Conference on Environment in Stockholm had 114 states and 26 principles were launched. Moreover, the first action plan for environment was launched in this conference. Now, this was a period where the Cold War politics was happening, and when United States proposed an immediate moratorium on commercial whaling, Soviet Union along with Japan, Norway, Iceland, Chile and Peru defeated the proposal unanimously. It is also very important that it led General Assembly to begin a new office called United Nations Environment Programme immediately after this conference. The next conference, which is very important, which took place in 1992. This was the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Decade of 1980s. This was a period when the pattern of growth was actually taking place, but it was realized that this would not continue forever. Sustainable development would be necessary. 110 heads of states and many thousands of non-governmental organizations came up with Agenda 21, and this played an important role in formulating the policies regarding environment. The main achievement of Rio was preceded by the fallout of three major events. Number 1, economic strains that followed the Gulf War. Number 2, uncertainties about climate change and global warming. Number 3, persistent animosity between the North and the South on the issues of population and inequitable trade. Rio explored an expanded meaning of the term sustainable development. It was found to be indicating 4 directions of growth. Number 1, environmental. Number 2, social. Number 3, cultural. Number 4, economic sustainability. Now, this was a comprehensive and holistic treatment to the issue of development. Agenda 21 became the primary document. Most problems need to be addressed at the local and national areas. However, international commitment to change is also needed. International aid to programs for high returns for poverty alleviation and environmental health, such as providing sanitation and clean water, reducing indoor air pollution, meeting basic needs. There was also the need for research and development on reducing soil erosion, family planning. More resources needs to be given for education, especially for the girls. Supporting governments in their attempts to remove distortions and macroeconomic imbalance that damage environment. Financing will be required for biodiversity protection. Research and development of non-carbon energy alternatives to respond to climate change, and these issues were very well given in Agenda 21. During the Rio summit, divisions between the North and the South became evident, especially in the case of Biodiversity Convention. The richest 70% biodiversity was concentrated in identified 12 mega diversity countries. These countries are Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Zaire, Madagascar, China, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia. Now, the developed countries wanted that these developing countries should protect the biodiversity or to preserve the biodiversity. But the cost of preserving this biodiversity was very high. The southern countries wanted support from the northern countries in order to protect the biodiversity. The three visible outcomes of the Rio Summit: number 1, Climate Convention; number 2, Biodiversity Convention; number 3, establishment of Commission on Sustainable Development, which were to report to the Economic and Social Council. The Rio Summit faced certain setbacks. There was a lot of differences between the north and the southern countries regarding forest and biodiversity protection. President of the United States, George Bush, played the role of the big brother, and he was trying to impose the consumption patterns and the requirements on the southern countries by emphasizing deforestation and population as a means to sidetrack the major issue of inequitable trade. However, Netherlands and the Nordic countries were more favorable to the demands of the southern states. The southern states tried to revive the United Nations goal of transferring 0.7% of the GDP of the rich countries as official development assistance to the poor countries in the south. Rio Cluster set the pace for the further action on related issues like human rights, population, social development, women, human settlement, and food security. Now, several other conferences happened which also helped in understanding the environment and in understanding that environmental issues are also very much related to political and social issues. In 1993, June, World Conference on Human Rights at Vienna took place. September 1994, International Conference on Population and Development at Cairo. March 1995, World Summit for Social Development at Copenhagen. September 1995, 4th World Conference on Women, Beijing, took place. June 1996, Habitat 2nd, that is the 2nd United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, took place. November 1996, at Rome, the World Food Summit was organized. World Trade Organization Conference took place at Seattle in 1999-2000, and in 2001 it took place in Genoa. The Finance for Development Conference took place in 2002. Environment started being linked with every social and political issue in the global scenario. 1995, the World Summit for Social Development at Copenhagen. It addressed three core issues. Number 1, eradication of poverty. Number 2, promotion of full employment. Number 3, fostering of social integration. Social development is inseparable from the cultural, ecological, economic, political, and spiritual environment. Global community is threatened by, number 1, environmental degradation, severe food crisis, epidemics, all forms of racial discrimination, xenophobia, various forms of intolerance, violence, risk of losing richness of cultural diversity. And these issues were discussed in the Copenhagen Conference. The governments recognized that the responses and desires to achieve sustainable development will require greater solidarity. September 1995, the World Conference on Women took place in Beijing. Now, in this conference, it was considered that women have a prominent role in sustainable development. Deterioration of natural resources were taking place, and it was displacing communities, especially women, from income-generating activities. Environmental degradation resulted in negative effects on health, well-being, and quality of life of the population, especially girls and women. Governments needed to integrate environmental sustainability and gender equality and justice, and need to follow the Agenda 21. In India also, we found the Chipko movement took place, where women played a very important role in protecting the trees and preventing the contractors from cutting down the trees. Indigenous women have particular knowledge to understand the economic linkages and the fragile ecosystem management. Women in many communities provide the main labor force of subsistence production. In certain regions, women are generally the most stable member of the community because men migrate to other places in order to pursue work in distant locations. It is the women who are left behind to safeguard the natural environment. 3 basic objectives were set on priority in the Beijing conference. 1. Involve women actively in environmental decision making at all levels. Number 2. Integrate gender concerns and perspectives in policies and programs for sustainable development. Number 3. Strengthen and establish mechanisms at the national, regional and international levels to assess the impact of development and environmental policies on women. June 1996, the United Nations Conference on Human Settlement, Habitat II, took place in Istanbul. Now there, a global partnership to conserve, protect and restore integrity of the Earth's ecosystem was aimed at. Local action guided organizational program based on Agenda 21. 1997, the Nairobi Declaration redefined and strengthened the United Nations Environment Programme's role and mandate. United Nations Environment Programme has been and should continue to be the principal United Nations body in the field of environment. The role of United Nations Environment Programme is to lead the global environmental movement in order to protect the environment. Reaffirmation of continuing relevance of the mandate of United Nations Environment Programme derived from the General Assembly Resolution of 2997 of 15 December 1972 and the further elaboration of Agenda 21 took place. Core elements of United Nations Environment Programme are: number 1, to analyze the state of global environment and assess the global and regional environmental trends. Number 2, to further develop the environmental laws at the international level. Number 3, to advance the implementation of the agreed international norms and policies. This was very important. Only signing treaties will not protect the environment. It is very necessary that the states implement the treaties and the international norms should be followed in order to protect the environment. Number 4, to strengthen the role of the United Nations in coordinating the environmental activities. Number 5, greater awareness and cooperation among all sectors of the society is necessary. There is a need for a link between the community and the policymakers. 2000, the Millennium Declaration goal aimed at environmental sustainability. Among the 8 MDG, that is the Millennium Development Goals, environmental sustainability was one of them. Global environmental problems will not be solved without addressing the fundamental problems of inequality. MDG emphasized on this point. Ecological interdependence is an incentive to cooperate. States and non-state actors need to cooperate in order to save the environment. Environmental degradation will lead to loss for all. Priorities need to be determined. Developing countries are demanding the linking of environment and development to serve as the basis for a new, just, equitable international order. But there's a lot of difference between the North and the South, that is the countries which are developed and the countries which are developing, regarding the means to protect the environment. States are slowly cooperating on some less difficult issues like marine pollution, Antarctica, protection of the ozone layer, acid rain, transboundary movement of hazardous wastes. But the complex and the more difficult problems are still not being solved. New forums and institutional responses are slowly coming up. They are appearing in order to address important environmental issues. The Sustainable Development Goals have come in. There are 17 goals in order to transform the world. It is aimed that by 2030, certain parameters will be reached. Among the 17 goals to transform the world, there are certain goals which also aim at environmental protection. Goal number 6, which states clean water and sanitation. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal number 13, climate action. Goal number 14, life below water. Goal number 15, life on land. On September 25, 2015, countries adopted a set of goals in order to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all as part of the new Sustainable Development Agenda. Each goal has specific targets which need to be achieved in the next 15 years. We should realize that in many cases, the Millennium Development Goals have not been reached. The target date was 2015, when it was not being possible for the countries to reach the MDG goals. Again, a new set of goals have come in, that is the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be achieved, or it is expected that the target will be achieved by 2030. Environment is a issue which needs to be addressed not only by the countries, it needs to be addressed by all sections of the society. While we went through industrialization, urbanization, we were thinking that human beings were advancing. But actually, advancing at what cost? The cost of our planet's protective environment. Mother Earth has given us a bounty. Human beings are actually the trustees of that bounty. If we don't protect it, it is very much possible that in the days to come, we will not be able to use the resources of land, air, water, and forests. Once these resources are lost, it will be lost forever. It will not be renewable. The southern countries are stating that poverty is a main reason why it is leading to pollution. Even our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had stated that poverty is the greatest polluter. The northern countries are making the southern countries responsible for the pollution of the environment. But we need to realize that if we continue blaming each other, it will not be leading to our benefit. It is for the benefit for all human beings that the North and the South come together cooperate in protecting the environment and making the world a better place to live in.